Welcome to another episode of The Jazz Scene, giving you an in-depth look at the music and stories of the music community here in Columbus. The Jazz Scene is presented by the Jazz Arts Group, America's oldest nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing the art of jazz through performance and education. My name is Zach Compston, Director of Education and Community Engagement here at Jazz Arts Group, and a professional musician living here in Columbus. So today we're here joined by Becky Ogden, the jazz lady and the teacher extraordinaire, owner of the Columbus Music Hall for many years, after having taught for many years and now running bungalow jazz concerts in your house for a number of years, and a gazillion different titles. First of all, thanks for joining us today. And I thought I would start at the very beginning. So a lot of people know you as, not the very beginning, but a lot of people know you as either a teacher, which is your entire career even to now, or the jazz lady, being a venue owner and operator. But I want to kind of start at the point where you got into music. So you must have been in band at an early age, right?
I was, and my very best friend, from the time we were 3 or 4 years old, his mom and dad were my music teachers. So his dad was my band director, and his mom, who had performed on vaudeville in an all-girl orchestra, was my saxophone teacher. And so they were all about music as entertainment more than music as not
pedagogy.
Not the intellectual side. It was like always fun. So there was always something fun going on at their house around their piano with instruments, or at my house around the piano with people singing. I mean, it was just, we kind of grew up in that musical tradition. I remember a dad of somebody who played barroom piano. I used to sit at the piano and watch him and try to figure out what his hands were doing at the piano. And so I learned a piano style of accompaniment that accommodated my lack of technique. And I still use that style of accompaniment today.
To get like a basic song across with your kids.
Yeah, just like a oompa kind of, just the chord changes.
And that was from watching
watching both the band director who played piano and this old guy who played barroom piano.
And did they ever explain it to you, or
no,
did you just have to figure it out?
I just would sit at the piano with him, and then somehow... Then we used to... from the time I was probably in 7th grade, we played little community dances, but part of that time was spent... There was round dancing, and then there was square dancing. And so on the square dancing part, I played the piano. You could just fall asleep playing, 3 chords at the piano while somebody was calling a square dance. And so that was kind of the heritage I grew up with.
And you grew up in rural Ohio.
Well, my town was a little town, but we wouldn't call it rural.
Well,
it was
what would be the difference?
Of the Ohio art, the Etch-a-Sketch. It was a pretty well-to-do town. My dad was school superintendent.
What was the name of that town?
Bryan, Ohio.
So your parents were educators?
My parents were educators. It's also the home of the Dum Dum, so the Spangler Candy Company and Candy Cane. So there was those were all the kids of all those families were my contemporaries.
Right.
So.
And you said your father was a superintendent?
My dad was a school superintendent. My mom was a 3rd grade teacher and a good piano player, and always accompanied me at contests.
And so when you started getting into music, was it pretty quickly that you knew that being an educator was probably...
No, not a music educator. That was an accident.
Tell me about how did that happen?
Well, when I was a senior in high school, probably the year I graduated with summer, and my dad, I think, was interviewing teachers, and somebody came to our house, and this man who I don't remember, said, well, what are you going to study in college? Where are you going to school? Ohio State. What are you going to study? I'm going to be in elementary education. He looked at me and said, what do you really want to do? And I said, music. And that comment changed my life.
And was your dad in the room for this?
No, I was alone with this man. I don't know what that was all about. But
interesting.
Anyway, he was a guy.
This was somebody that was coming to your father's school?
I have no idea who he was, actually. But it was a stranger. And so when I went to Ohio State that fall, I re-registered everything. I auditioned.
So that conversation planted the seed of
planted the seed.
You were able to be honest about music education more specifically.
And he must have said, well, then that's what you should do, or something.
Right.
And I switched majors when I got to Ohio State.
Pretty
that
quickly,
September,
like right at the beginning.
Yeah, and I auditioned, and I was a saxophone player and a good one.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
But and I had a student had preceded me at Ohio State who was a saxophone major from my hometown, and he fed me all of the material he was playing in college. So I'd already played all of the solos that as I was
coming up through high school. And so when you
so thank goodness.
Yeah. That's an amazing story.
I ended up in music and not in elementary education.
How did your parents feel when you decided on music education? Did that change their opinion at all?
I don't remember anybody caring. Everybody went to bat for me and supported it.
And you said that at the time it wasn't uncommon for females. This would be the late 50s.
58, I graduated from high school. So yeah, there were lots of girls in
going to college
school and going to college
and music school. So you weren't. It was not even uncommon for females to be studying music.
No.
So you started at Ohio State, and then you switched right at the beginning to music, and so that put you on like the playing saxophone and taking lessons and doing that in addition to your studies, education studies.
Well, it was just the music track. Yeah, it was music education.
But you had to do juries and recitals, and so you kept the saxophone going at the collegiate level, the same as a performance major, probably for a lot of it.
Right,
studying
ensembles,
wise,
and private lessons.
And so from all that time we just sort of covered, was jazz ever sort of specifically called out as what you were doing?
My brother listened to Stan Kenton, and my saxophone teacher, who is not the vaudeville lady,
right?
My high school saxophone teacher, when we drove to Columbus, we had to hold our breath as we drove through Kenton, Ohio, in honor of Stan Kenton. And if there was a train, we were screwed. So that's my big Stan Kenton thing. But otherwise,
you had to hold your breath in Kenton, Ohio, in reverence to Stan Kenton.
Correct.
Because your brother.
Because of my saxophone teacher.
Oh, because of your saxophone teacher. And what would happen if you couldn't hold your breath?
I guess we.
Did the band
for ice cream?
The Kenton band lost a gig every time you couldn't.
Yeah, so Kenton was really the only jazz that I heard my brother, and also this guy played bebop. He was a big bebop guy, and I would go. I had a Bugs Bauer bebop book, and so I went on some gigs with them. And I don't know what I did.
What did that bebop? Was it written bebop lines?
It was written bebop. I still have the books, I think.
Oh, I would love to see that.
I'll bring them to you.
Bugs Bauer bebop book.
Bebop. But I didn't know. I didn't know Miles Davis or any of those names were just. And then, of course, at Ohio State, there was no jazz.
Right. So Right. So you went to Ohio State in the early 50s or late 50s, early 60s.
58 to 62.
Yep. And so that was not yet at the time where they had that band rehearsing down in the basement of...
Well, but Tom Battenberg's a year younger than me, and so something was going on.
Okay. So Tom got through, and we should have a separate conversation with Tom. He was going through school on the trumpet track, classical trumpet.
Right. At the same time I was doing classical. We actually played solos on the same concert tour. And look at him and look at me,
right?
As a performer.
So for the people that don't know Tom is the principal trumpetist with the Columbus Symphony and Pro Musica Chamber Orchestra,
who just retired. After 50 years of playing trumpet,
and was the first jazz studies director, jazz band director at Ohio State when they sort of codified their program.
Right. So I was.
It was on the cusp.
Girls didn't play jazz. I think they did, but no girls I knew played jazz.
Gotcha. So you went through music education at Ohio State, and on your way through your degree, and then you got your first teaching job in Columbus City Schools.
It was Mifflin.
Oh, that was its own school district.
It was its own school district, and then when they went into Columbus, I got out and went to Worthington.
Gotcha.
So I was 7 years in Mifflin. And then the rest of my teaching career was in Worthington. And
so, and the other thing is that you had children right at the beginning of your teaching career.
Yes. Which
probably was extremely difficult to juggle.
Well, like I said, I was young and dumb, and who knew? I didn't know how hard it was.
Right. So it's all hindsight.
All hindsight. I probably wasn't a very good mother. You can ask them, and they'll probably agree.
Hey, they still love you. I've met them, and they all are great people. I just met your great niece.
My granddaughter and my great-granddaughter were at PBJ and Jazz on Saturday.
Yep, very nice people. So when you started your career, you started teaching elementary music.
I actually taught fourth grade for 2 years, and then when the
fourth grade music,
fourth grade classroom.
Oh, core.
I
everything.
had it retrained because there were very few elementary music jobs in those days. I don't think Columbus had elementary music at that time. They had a few music teachers, but the jobs were scarce. So I did extra work and got my
general education
degree.
And so at that time, was music taught in the classroom, like in the core classroom, as a component of your regular?
There was a music teacher in Mifflin because I ended up taking her place. I think they came to the classroom. I don't think there was a music room. Yeah. And they taught out of the book,
And you said you did that for 2 years, teaching fourth grade general classroom, before going to music at Mifflin.
At Mifflin.
And you
really didn't have any guidance, and you didn't have to know anything, and you just did. You kind of did what was natural.
And so when you took the music job, it would have been all elementary at that point?
All elementary, two elementary schools. Mm-hmm.
So now you're an elementary general music teacher. What about your upbringing were you implementing into your teaching? Because you never struck me as somebody that has, like, they taught me this in music education class, and I teach by this method and that method.
Yeah, well, I think it's still true today. You don't really learn to teach until you teach.
Right.
Though, the Kodai and ORF programs, I think,
are important.
Yeah.
But for you at that time, were you taking just what you experienced in your upbringing, both in and outside of school?
Yeah, but there were music books. Like Silver Burdette had a music book. It's still my favorite book, and it was full of great folk tunes. So the music teaching was really a folk, traditional American folk, and some international folk music as a guide. And
so you were putting on in-school full student body concerts and things, and all the classes would come and listen to the other classes. I remember those elementary classes where you'd shuffle all the first grade onto the stage and off, and then the second.
Right.
So that was...
You'd do things like that, and you had concerts for parents.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the Mifflin years, we would have bomb scares all the time. So
we're talking 68, 70.
Yeah, and so we spent a lot of time outside waiting for the school to be cleared, and I did a lot of large group music at that time. That was when I got to be, with my guitar, really good at manipulating the whole school at the same time and keeping them entertained while the bomb scare was going on.
So how real were those bomb scares?
We just a little bit ago before this, we were talking about how involved that was kind of the Vietnam era.
But did people treat them as practice, or
no? This was a bomb scare.
And so when a bomb scare would happen, people would have to go into the basement or get into the... We
had to go outside. Must have been nice weather.
Right. You didn't hide. You just sort of went outside.
Until the police cleared the school.
And so the bomb scare, what would they tell you as a teacher at the time? What were they saying to you about what the scare was? Were they feeding you truthful information or being vague?
I don't know. It's just...
Wow.
Something I hadn't thought about for a long time. That's where I really got my chops for large group manipulation.
So there's a silver lining in the bomb scare thing.
Scare.
And now, obviously, with Jazz Arts Group, you're doing the full, third, fourth, fifth grade all at once, and you've been doing that now for a long time.
I've been doing that since the bomb scares.
And the PBJ and jazz concerts we do are similar. It's like we've got big bodies of people, and we're going to entertain everybody at once.
Yeah.
Wow. And so then you go to Worthington. About 7 years in, you go to Colonial Hills.
I was at Colonial Hills for the 23 years till I retired. Mm-hmm. And a great little... Well, I was always there 4 days a week and somewhere else one day.
Somewhere else in that district?
In the district. Mm-hmm.
And was that another elementary, or did you only do elementary
Only
at that
did
job?
elementary there.
And so at that time, as you're developing, as a career educator, that actually sort of coincided with Jazz Arts Group